After several supermarket beef controversies in 2025, imported meat arriving from Australia and Uruguay, major retailers formally challenged by the NFU over broken British sourcing pledges, and a government food safety programme finding non-compliance rates above 40% in frozen beef, we started looking at what was actually inside Britain's most popular mince brands. What we found goes beyond sourcing politics. It goes into the tray itself, the gas that holds the colour, the trimmings it was ground from, the welfare conditions of the animals before they reach the grinder. 8 brands that cannot justify what they are putting in front of you. 4 that can. Starting now. The brands to skip. Starting with the one in more British fridges than any other, and the one whose problems go deepest because the people buying it are often the ones with least ability to check what is in it. Brand 1. Tesco, everyday value beef, mince. Most shoppers who reach for the everyday value mince are feeding families on a budget. They are not cutting corners by choice. They are trusting that the country's largest grocery retailer has held this product to a standard appropriate for the families placing it on the dinner table every week. That trust is being extended to a product that may not have earned it. The mince is ground from beef trimmings, not a defined cut, not a named muscle. The fragments left on carcasses after every portion anyone might pay more for has already been removed and sold elsewhere. These come from multiple animals, often sourced across different herds and different processing facilities, pooled into a single batch. When you open this pack and cook it, you have no way of knowing how many individual animals contributed to what is in your pan. Some of those animals may have spent their lives in very different conditions from one another. Most shoppers assume the cheapest mince is simply a less attractive cut of beef. What many never consider is how heavily medicated some cattle may be before they ever reach the grinder. Routine antibiotic use remains common practice across sections of the UK beef trimming market. These are not antibiotics given to treat a sick animal. They are preventative doses given at scale to manage the risk of illness in high-density production environments. The World Health Organization has formally identified antibiotic residues in meat as a direct contributor to antimicrobial resistance, one of the most consequential public health threats of this decade. You are putting this in front of your children. The label doesn't tell you whether the animals in this tray were raised this way. The price point makes that question worth asking every single time. Around £2.50 for 500 grams at Tesco. Pause. The fat percentage on a mince pack tells you one thing. It does not tell you which animals the trimmings came from, what proportion of the meat content is collagen rather than muscle, how long the product sat in a modified gas atmosphere, or whether the cattle were routinely medicated. All 4 affect what ends up on your plate. None are required on the packaging. Completely different problem here. What is in the Morrison's pack may be travelling further than the label suggests, and the conditions of that journey have a direct effect on what ends up in your food. Brand 2. Morrison's Beef Mince. In June 2025, Morrison's began introducing Australian beef into its fresh product range. Australian cattle production makes widespread use of feedlot systems where animals are moved from open pasture into high-density confined pens and fed grain concentrate to reach weight quickly. Picture that transition. An animal that grazed open land, removed from its environment and confined in a densely packed enclosure with hundreds of others. Research in animal behavior science has established that this shift triggers measurable and sustained stress responses. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone in cattle, rises and remains elevated throughout feedlot confinement. What cortisol does to meat is not a theoretical concern. It reduces the muscle's ability to retain moisture during cooking. It degrades the tenderness that develops when an animal is allowed to grow and move at its natural pace. The stress the animal experienced before slaughter reaches the pan in ways you cannot see or smell but can measure. Beyond welfare, the grain finishing common in feedlot systems shifts the beef's fatty acid composition. Grass-raised. British cattle produce beef with a more favourable omega-3 to omega-6 balance. That ratio matters for inflammation in the human body. Feedlot finishing tilts it in the wrong direction with every meal that contains it. You pick up a pack of Morrison's Beef Mince. The pack may carry British imagery. The small print may tell a different story. Morrison stated the Australian range represented less than 2% of fresh beef sales. That percentage sits in a body you eat from multiple times a week, every week across years, around £2.30 for 500 grams. Quick reality check. Everything covered so far came from the UK's biggest supermarkets, and we're only getting started. Now shift to a brand where an environmental announcement quietly changed what the product does in your kitchen without adjusting what you pay for it. Brand 3. Sainsbury's Beef Mince. In early 2023, Sainsbury's removed tray packaging from its entire beef mince range and replaced it with vacuum-sealed film, citing a 55% plastic reduction. Consumer response was immediate and broadly negative. National World reported the backlash. 2 complaints dominated. The mince arrived compressed into a solid block and it refused to brown properly. The browning complaint is not cosmetic preference. When mince is vacuum compressed during cold storage, the dense uniform structure does not break apart on contact with heat the way naturally packed mince does. Moisture trapped within the compressed mass reaches the hot pan before the outer surface can caramelize. The Maillard reaction, the process that creates flavor depth in properly seared mince, does not complete. The pan fills with liquid instead of developing fond. Whoever wrote the Bolognese recipe on the packet assumed normally textured mince. Sainsbury's changed the product. The recipe stayed. The price did not move. Around £3.25 for 500 grams at Sainsbury's. Before we go further, hit subscribe. What is coming next includes a brand with a Food Standards Agency product recall on public record and one charging a premium for an origin claim its parent company's 2025 decisions actively contradict. Here is where the evidence becomes a matter of government record, publicly accessible at food.gov.uk. Brand 4. Little Birchwood Beef Mince. In February 2021, the Food Standards Agency issued a formal product recall for Little Birchwood beef and pork mince. The recall notice states directly, the possible presence of plastic makes this product unsafe to eat. A second recall for Birchwood XXL. Pork mince followed separately, same reason. 2 contamination events within the same own brand range is not a packaging anomaly. It is a processing environment where machinery components and raw meat occupied a proximity that should never exist. Consider what that means in a household. Plastic fragments in mince are invisible before and during cooking. They do not dissolve under heat. A family cooking a shepherd's pie from a recalled batch had no way of knowing what was in it before the FSA announcement. Lidl issued an apology. The Birchwood range continued. Trustpilot reviews from 2024 described the vacuum-packed Birchwood mince arriving as a solid compressed block, cooking without flavour, and being discarded uneaten. Multiple reviewers with no connection to one another reached the same conclusion independently. The recall is on public record. The quality feedback is consistent. Both remain part of what this product has been. Around £2.20 for 500 grams at Lidl. Here's where things get strange. The next brand charges a premium, specifically because elevated tier labelling implies a different supply relationship. The retailer behind it was simultaneously introducing beef from countries operating to lower welfare and environmental standards than the UK, while charging you more for the British premium. What makes this worse is that the premium on this label exists precisely to capture people who already stopped trusting the budget tier. Brand 5, Asda Extra Special Beef Mince. People who reach for the extra special range are not buying mince without thought. They looked at the cheaper tray and decided to spend more. They saw higher welfare language on the front and believed the extra money meant something better for their family. That is exactly the person this label is designed for. And it's exactly that person the 2025 sourcing decisions betray most directly. Asda introduced Uruguayan beef into its fresh range in 2025, but the deeper issue is not political. It is what you are actually eating. What an animal eats becomes, in a measurable way, part of what you eat. Cattle raised on diverse British pasture produce beef with a fatty acid composition that genuinely differs from animals finished intensively on grain in lower welfare international operations. The omega-3 content drops. The omega-6 content rises. That shift is invisible in the product. It does not affect the colour or the smell, but it affects what those weekly meals are quietly doing to the inflammatory balance in your body over months and years of regular consumption. The extra special packaging communicates better. Better for the animal, better for you. The 2025 sourcing decisions reveal what better actually means when the cost pressure arrives and the commitment is tested. Around £4 for 500 grams across Asda stores. The next one sits in the frozen aisle. And the frozen beef category carries a government finding that most people purchasing it have never been shown. Brand 6. Iceland Beef Mince. Iceland's frozen beef mince operates within a category that produced a stark result in the FSA's 2024 Retail Surveillance Sampling Programme. Of frozen beef burgers tested, 42% were non-compliant. 8 samples contained less meat than the label declared. 4 showed fat content exceeding what was stated on the front. A consumer who bought one of those non-compliant products believing the fat declaration was accurate was consuming more fat per meal than they had been told. That error compounds across every meal prepared from a product making false declarations. No farm-level provenance, breed information, or processing facility data is published for Iceland Beef Mince. In a category where the government regulator found non-compliance at over 40% in its most recent formal check, the complete absence of published quality verification transfers the entire weight of that risk onto the person opening the freezer bag. Around £2.75 for 500 grams at Iceland. Wait, this is important. A formal FSA plastic contamination recall, an NFU public challenge over a broken British farming pledge, a 42% FSA non-compliance rate in frozen beef. Not social media speculation, government-level findings, everyone publicly accessible. 2 more brands to cover. This one is built entirely around a feeling. The feeling created by a single word before you have even looked at anything else on the pack. Brand 7. Co-op. Beef steak mince. The word steak creates an image in your head before you have even touched the pack. Thick cuts, whole muscle, the kind of beef worth paying more for. You reach for it because you want something better for your family, something worth the extra, something your body will actually benefit from rather than simply filling you up. That image was built deliberately, and the product is not required to live up to it. UK food law does not require beef steak mince to contain any defined proportion of actual steak trim. The descriptor is a marketing term with no legally enforced quality obligation behind it. The nutritional difference between this and the standard mince beside it depends entirely on what actually went into the grinder, not on what word was chosen for the label. If the underlying blend is comparable to standard trimming mince, the protein-to-fat ratio is comparable, the collagen content is comparable, the texture during cooking is comparable. You paid more, your body received the same. The word steak gave you the feeling of a better choice without the product being required to deliver one. That is the specific disappointment this label creates. Not illegal, not hidden. Just designed to let your expectations do the selling that the product itself cannot. Around £3.75 for 500 grams at the Co-op. Quick recap. Plastic recalls, broken British sourcing pledges, misleading label claims, non-compliant fat declarations, processing changes that affected cooking performance without touching the price. The final brand on this list performed worst where it matters most, in the pan, releasing more fat than every cheaper product independently tested against it. And the last entry carries the most trusted name in British food retail, which makes what independent testing found considerably harder to dismiss. Brand 8. Waitrose, essential 20%, fat beef. Mince. Waitrose occupies a specific cultural position in UK grocery. The implicit contract is that the name itself represents a quality threshold already applied. Before the product reaches the shelf, you pay more not simply for the product but for the assurance that Waitrose has done the scrutiny on your behalf. An independent cooking test published by the food platform Lovefood found that essential Waitrose 20% fat beef mince released more grease than any other product tested. Approximately 80 millilitres of fat and 20 millilitres of liquid pooled in the pan after a standard cook. More than budget alternatives from supermarkets charging significantly less. The pack uses flow wrap film rather than a tray with an absorbent pad, described by Waitrose as a 70% plastic reduction. What it also means is that liquid released from the mince during cold storage sits in direct contact with the product from the moment of packing. When the package opens at home, that accumulated liquid is what meets you first. The Waitrose name communicates a quality flaw that the essential range at 20% fat does not reach. Around £2.50 for 500 grams at Waitrose. The same retailer stocks a product that does reach it. It is the final entry on the good list. 8 brands to skip. Now the 4 that earn everything they charge. What they share: verifiable provenance beyond a country of origin declaration, mince from named whole muscle cuts or certified breed lines, and quality commitments that can be checked before the tray leaves the shelf. What to buy instead? Now the good news. And the first option has been in the kitchens of some of the UK's finest restaurants for over 17 years, without a single supermarket listing needed to sustain it. Good option. 1. Swaledale Butchers, minced beef. Swaledale is a Yorkshire-based independent butcher working with approximately 30 named farms and local abattoirs across the Dales. The beef comes from heritage breeds including Dexter, Highland and Belted Galloway, raised on limestone pasture and diverse native forage. Every product carries provenance to the specific farm of origin. The farmer is named. The breed is declared. The feed history is traceable grass and wildflower grazing, not an anonymous trimming pool from a centralised processing plant. The mince is ground from a blend of aged quality cuts: chuck, rib cap, flank and short rib, dry aged for a minimum of 28 days before grinding. That approach produces a coarser, denser result than anything processed from trimming runs. It separates cleanly in a hot pan, colours correctly without flooding the base with excess liquid, and carries a depth of flavour that makes direct comparison with anything in the first half of this list almost unfair. Always fresh, never frozen, butchered to order and dispatched overnight. No gas atmosphere, no extended retail cycle, no processing facility 3 counties away. Available at swaledale.co.uk, around £9.50 for 500 grams. The next option requires no online order. It is in a major UK supermarket today, and the difference from everything on the skip list is verifiable on the label before you leave the aisle. 35 years of certified organic farming. A farm-built abattoir, a certification that disappears the moment the standard is not met. Good option 2. Daylesford Organic Beef Mince. Daylesford has farmed organically in Gloucestershire and Staffordshire for over 35 years. The beef herd comprises South Devon, Gloucester and Aberdeen Angus cattle, reared on certified organic land without routine antibiotic treatment, without GM feed, and without synthetic inputs on the pasture. These are Soil Association certification requirements, independently inspected every 12 months. The mark cannot be carried over, it must be re-earned each year or it is withdrawn. Consider what that standard actually means for the animal, and by extension, for you. A South Devon or Aberdeen Angus raised on diverse certified organic pasture and allowed to mature slowly develops a fundamentally different meat composition from an animal pushed to weight on concentrate feed. Genuinely grass-fed beef carries a more favourable omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acid ratio than grain-finished alternatives, a distinction supported by decades of nutritional research. Protein content in Daylesford, mince reaches 20.3 grams per 100 grams, higher than most comparable products, reflecting the muscle density of cattle grown slowly on varied terrain. Daylesford built its own on-site abattoir specifically to eliminate transport stress. The cortisol that degrades both tenderness and moisture retention in animals driven long distances to centralized facilities is absent here. The animal lived differently. It was processed close to where it was raised. You taste that distinction. Over 100 organic food awards confirm that others have too. Available at Waitrose, Marks & Spencer, Able & Cole and Daylesford.com. Around £6.50 for 400 grams. Good option 3. Your local independent butcher, not a brand. The most direct quality upgrade available to any British consumer and frequently no more expensive than the elevated tier supermarket products already covered in the skip section. An independent butcher grinds mince fresh each day from whole muscle cuts visible in the cabinet. The product you buy this afternoon was prepared this morning from a named animal. The butcher knows the farm it came from and will tell you without being asked. No gas atmosphere. No centralized batch processing. The FSA's 2024 surveillance program found 42% non-compliance in frozen beef products from the same tier of retail covered in the first half of this list. A butcher grinding daily from named whole muscle cuts in a display case operates in a different category of food production from the one that generated that statistic entirely. Typical cost for quality steak, mince from an independent runs between £7 and £9 per kilo, comparable to the Asda extra special price point. Not remotely comparable in what you can verify about what you are actually eating. And the last option closes the loop on Waitrose, because the same retailer that appears in the skip section also carries the one product in a major UK supermarket whose claims are checked by an independent body every year, whether the retailer chooses to invite that scrutiny or not. Good option. 4. Waitrose Duchy Organic Beef Mince. This is not the essential mince with a better label. The Duchy Organic product carries Soil Association certification, requiring full third-party inspection annually. The cattle are British, farmed to complete organic standards, free from routine medication, on land that must meet the Soil Association's full agricultural criteria to retain the mark. Non-compliance at inspection means the certification is removed. That accountability structure exists for none of the products in the first half of this list. Fat content sits at 12%, reflecting leaner muscle from cattle grown on certified pasture rather than a trimming blend approaching the legal ceiling. Protein per gram is correspondingly higher. The gap between this product and the essential mince on the shelf directly below it is not a marketing tier decision. It is the presence of an annual independent inspection with the authority to withdraw the mark for any failure. That is what real verification looks like. Available at Waitrose and Ocado, around £5 and 25 pence for 500 grams. 8 brands to skip, 4 worth the money. The gas atmosphere, the trimming origin, the antibiotic history, the welfare conditions before slaughter. None of it is required on the front of a tray. The brands in the first half made a deliberate choice to keep it off. One question cuts through everything before you spend a penny. Can you find out where this animal actually came from? If the answer is not on the label, now you know exactly what that silence means.